just say you're a fine-looking bunch of folks this morning? Why don't you just look at your neighbor real quick and say, you look great. You just look awesome. First time some of you spouses have said that to each other in years. What's up, man? I'm really glad you're here this morning. I'm also really just excited to have a friend of mine come and be with us this morning, Trent and John Carpenter. Trent is the lead pastor at C3, which let me just say a couple things. Number one, it's not 3C, it's C3, and that stands for Cross Community Church. Trent and some others planted that church in September of 2007, and from that time till now, it's a church that's been Jesus in the flesh. They have touched this community in so many different ways, and actually have challenged me to take looks at how we do things differently, to be able to touch the community. They also have in this second service with us their children, Taden and Tegan. Stand for us, please. I won't make you come up here, but just stand. Just go ahead, do it. Stand. Yeah, there they are. Them great looking. Sit down. I'm really not going to make a big introduction except for to say this. It is awesome to have a friend in ministry who knows what I go through. He planted a church, we've planted a church. He's pastoring, I'm pastoring. We get together, and sometimes all we do is spend an hour just talking about you. I mean, he talks about his people, I talk about you. And it's just awesome to have a friend like that we can just share with each other, and the staff that he has, Brian and Jimmy and Kent, they're just my friends, and I just really appreciate the friendship and the kinship and the fellow laborers that they are in my life. And so I've asked him. We've tried this for years. For years, I've tried to get him to come and speak, and he keeps saying, "I'm not coming down there. I'm just not doing it. I just won't." No, he really didn't. We just never could really get it to match up. But for some reason today it works. And I'm just excited to say I want you to welcome my friend Trent Carpenter as he comes to share with us this morning.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, good morning. So glad you guys are here. I'm going to say a few things in the beginning, and it's not the traditional route that I go, just because I think you guys need to hear it as a church. And just let me say, I really am incredibly honored to be here, and I cannot say enough about you guys as a church, as a local body of believers, what you mean to this community, the impact that you play, more than you know, and I do want to talk about that. But also, even just for your pastor, just really one of my best friends in ministry, and he has no clue what I'm going to say. He didn't in the first service, which probably makes him really nervous because he knows me well. But with that, I really do want to say this. I don't want you guys to miss what you have. And that's not praise to him or anything else, but you guys have a great church and a great pastor, and you should always, always be so grateful for that. And again, I'm just honored to be here. Terry has some amazing skills, I promise, that I and we're talking a little bit about jealousy and envy and stuff today, but I'm envious of him in so many ways. His amazing deep voice, right? Like, when I sound like a 12-year-old girl, so even in our church, when I'm like, you need to stop that, it's like, what? Really, Katrina? Leave it, okay? So it just doesn't work. But he really does. He just has that. It sounds like a spokesman of God when he speaks, Trent. Like, okay, sorry, was that an angel God? I don't know. And then also, he's a hugger. I'm not really a hug guy, and I know that's horrible. It is. I'm not touchy-feely. But even when I shake his hand, I'm like, my goodness, his hand just it's like, it's intimidating a little bit. And I'm 4'2", so not nearly as intimidating. But before we get started, and this really isn't the message, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I feel like it's just needed. There's some things, and I'm not speaking for him. Like I said, I haven't even talked to him. But I was trying to think, when I opened up and I told him, I want to kind of give you just a couple quick things, kind of confessions of a pastor. And when you're a pastor at a church, you really can't say this, but it's the kind of thing that if someone else walked in, they would say, hey, this is really how it works. And I've worked in a lot of different places. I've worked for companies. I've had a lot of different jobs, but I can tell you, being like the senior pastor, lead pastor, there's some things there that so many people don't understand, and this isn't pity party, but hopefully through saying a few of these, this can help you guys kind of understand before we get started, and then hopefully the last one ties in with that a little bit. But I was thinking if I had a confession like time with you guys from a pastor, and all the friends that I have who are pastors kind of share the same stuff, but just 4 real quick things I'm going to say super fast, is one, as a pastor, especially senior pastor, lead pastor, you always feel like you have to be on. You do. I mean, you really do. And it's not a fake thing. You just have to be the one who's always, yes, 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 I believe in this. Yes, God's going to do this. Yes. And I was even told this to the first service. On Mondays, we have like a staff meeting. And in our staff meeting, all my guys quit every Monday. They do. And you think I'm making that up, but they are. They're just like, this volunteer's mad, this leader's doing it. They're just, it's like sometimes if I don't rein it in, it can become just like Gripe Fest USA. But I remember one morning, I was having a bad day and it was a rough weekend, and everybody's just kind of like, I want to, drive a bread truck for Hunters. I wish I was, back there, just going on and on. And I kind of got tired, and I just said, I'm out too. And it was like instantly, they get a complaint all the time, but the second I was like, fine, I'm done too. It's like, wait, you can't be out, right? So you kind of feel that pressure of like, I have to be on. 2, and I think this is the one I didn't understand until it happened, you feel incredibly responsible and you hurt so bad for every member of your church. I promise you guys this. You may think, well, I bet he really doesn't care. Like, it kills your soul when something bad happens with a member of church. When someone comes up to me and says, hey, I want you to pray, my marriage is struggling, or hey, I want you to pray, our kid's been really sick, or hey, this is going on. I promise you guys, it is no different than if my 2 children came up to me and said the exact same thing. And then another thing a lot don't talk about, and I think it's why it's so dangerous at times for pastors, number 3 is you feel so alone at times, even though you have people all around you. And that's a weird thing to say, but it's so true. You feel like you can just be so lonely. And then this is where I want to talk about the message, and I'm going to tie in with this one. 4 for me, and this isn't your pastor, but a lot of guys I talk to, is you feel extremely inadequate. The enemy is constantly in my head saying, you don't have what it takes. You don't. And luckily, as I've gotten older and more mature, I've realized to be able to say, you're right. I mean, I don't argue with the enemy, but he's right. I don't have what it takes. But through Christ, I am able to do what he's called me to do. I heard a pastor say this, and I thought it was so awesome. We're going to talk about the comparison trap today. And the reason I like that is because I don't care what stage of life you're in, all of us struggle with the comparison trap. We do. And I think we're realizing a couple of dangers in this. One, we're not being who God's called us to be. We'll never live out the calling of our life as long as we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. But then 2, it's no way to live. That's what Pastor said, and I thought it was so good. He said, we're comparing our behind the scenes with other people's highlight reels. Can anyone here say social media? Facebook? I mean, is that not right? Like, you hardly ever see a picture of like, a family and they're fighting and, the parents. We put our best forward. And what the problem with that is I start comparing your highlight reel to my everyday or typically my worst. I haven't thought of this. We feel like losers. Why? Because we see the best of someone else when I know the worst of the worst with my own. So I wanted to just talk about what are some things that we compare. And I got a confession to make to you guys. I am like super competitive. Super. And my kids, my wife's here, they'll tell you that. Like it's sick. In a lot of ways. It really, really is. Like, I take it too far. We were playing like a little staff. We had a game on Thursday and just like take a break and playing like a volleyball game. And I promise, if I lose, I'm mad. I'm trying to fight you. Like I'm that sick person. And I remember when my wife and I were first dating and she got the first dose of truly who I am behind closed doors. I took her to a really fancy restaurant. It was Giovanni's in Chesapeake. I don't know if you've ever been there. Amazing place. But I remember I took her there, and it was early on. It was like the first couple of dates. And we're sitting there, we're eating. I'm maybe 19 or 20. We're both, in that age range. And as we're eating, look over, and there's this little girl. And I mean, she had to be 4 or 5, had on pink cowboy boots, little dress. And she was by the air hockey table. They used to have air hockey. I don't know if they have it now. But she's like, has the, the handle, and there's no puck because you have to pay money. And long story short, she's just over there kind of looking around. So I walk over, because I'm a gentleman. And I'm like, would you like to play? And she's like, yeah. Like, absolutely. So I remember I put in like 4 quarters. We got the puck out. We start playing. And I remember in that moment when I asked this little girl if she would like to play, I promise you guys, you can ask my wife after service. My wife, that was the moment where she said, I'm marrying this guy. I am. He's hot. I know you don't think I'm hot, but she thought I was. And she was like, you think about it for a second. Like this, what 19-year-old really kind of like plays with kids? He'll be a great, I'm sure in her mind she's thinking he'll be a great father. He'll be a great man. All this stuff. Until we started playing. 8 seconds later, and you can ask her, I was like, 7-0, what? This girl's crying. I mean, I mauled her. And I get back, sat down, I'm like, man, she was terrible. Like, she's the worst player I've ever played. And I remember my wife, I remember she looked at me and she was like, you're sick. You know that? You're a sick human being. But I am. And it works that way. But what do we compare before we get started? We're going to look at a guy by the name of King Saul and David, and we're going to kind of contrast the two of those. Before we do, I want to give you just things we compare. This kind of be a checklist for you, okay? I said earlier, we live in the land of We always want we want more of something else. Just a couple things. Maybe none of these are you, and if not, you're awesome. You should be up here talking about this instead of me. But the first is possessions. We want to be richer. So many of us, we're chasing shiny things. We are. We're spending our life trying to get a better job so we can make more money. Why? Because we'll be happier. No, we won't, but we feel that way. If I could just have this, or, we look online and someone's like, oh, just made dinner for the kids, and you can't see that through the post because all you can see is their fancy, like, granite countertops and their sweet magazine-looking kitchen. We kind of have that problem, right? We want more possessions. Second thing for so many of us is appearance. We want to be skinnier, right? We hate that girl or that guy that's always posting their 18th workout of the day, right? I don't even know why you do that, but it's like, working out my third time today. I didn't have as much time to get my normal 5 in. It's like, I don't like you, right? Like, I am unfriending you right now, but it kind of works that way. If you've ever watched teenage girls, and I'm not calling out teenage girls, but I taught for literally 8 years at Ironton High School, and I can tell you guys, I would watch, like, it would be the sweetest girl in the world. She's so sweet. And if she was pretty, it was guaranteed other girls hated her, right? I remember one girl even said when she's like, I don't like her. I said, why not? She's like, well, she's pretty. I'm like, exactly, right? We don't like that because we compare appearance too many times. As you have kids, performance. We want our kids to be better, right? I didn't say this in the first service, but I'll tell you, sickness, and this is how you can tell if you're maybe comparing too much. If you're ever at a Little League game and your kid's playing and there's another kid like maybe batting in front of them or earlier than them and they strike out on your team and deep down you're happy that they struck out, right? Right? And some of you are like, oh, I'd never do that. Yeah, we do that. Trust me, right? Because we're all about performance. We are. Some of you watch it, and you dropping off your kids at school, and the other mom who's just done up, she looks like she's ready for a photo shoot, and her kids come out, backpack. Thanks for breakfast this morning, Mom. I love bacon and eggs and cheese. And you look, and your kid's hair's not combed. You're asking, like, did you brush your teeth this morning? You don't know. They don't know, right? You got curlers in your hair. You're just trying to make it. That's performance. And then the last one, which is also just as much as circumstances, right? And I know if you don't know me, my two kids are here, but my son Tayden was born profoundly deaf. And if I just be honest with you guys, just shooting straight, when that happened, of a guy I knew pretty well who was not a good dad, wasn't a good father, had 3 kids at the time. And I remember even kind of questioning God, thinking, I'm trying to live for you. I'm trying to serve you. Why are you letting this happen to us when this guy doesn't deserve nearly as much? See, that's a dangerous thing to do. 1, because I'm maybe trying to play God a little more, but 2, I'm comparing my circumstances. And I've got kind of this underlying thing, if I serve you, God, then you'll always give me what I want. And it doesn't work that way. So those are some things that we compare. So here's what I want to talk about. How do we kill our comparisons? Why our comparisons must die. 2 Corinthians 10:12 says this. It says, we do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves, this is such a great line, when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are what? Not wise. What's God saying here? The second you start looking over your shoulder, the second you start looking at other people and kind of what's going on, the second that happens, I promise you, you've moved out of living out of your calling into either a competitive or a comparison type spirit. And I promise you, you never win. See, that's the problem with comparison. There's no win. There's no finish line. I said it before, I'll say it again. This church, I think the world of you guys, you have no clue. You really are like a big brother to C3. And 99% of you in here don't even know that. When we were getting ready to start the church, I'd heard of, like, in some big cities, people had started churches and kind of felt God was maybe leading me. But I promise you, I'd never heard anywhere in the area happening. And I remember I was even talking to someone, they're like, well, I think there's a place that meets at a funeral home or some place, and, like, I think they started. I started checking you guys out. I was asking people questions. You guys really were the trailblazers of this area. You were. You really were. And you look at what God's done here. I mean, I was sitting there in the first service and Terry said, you baptized 21 people. Not this year. Last week. That's not normal. That's not. And you should celebrate that. You really should. Because here's what happens. Sometimes you can get so close to things, you miss it. Sometimes things can happen and God can bless you so much, you don't realize truly how much He's blessed you. And the worst thing, and I tell my guys this all the time when we sit down, I say, if there's anything else, if I'm going to be in charge of this gang, God bless us all, if I'm going to be in charge of us, you need to understand one thing, and one thing only. Let us never take this for granted. Let us never assume this is the way it has to be, because God can change that and turn it in a heartbeat. And I know that. So every day I'm saying, God, we thank you. This church should be in just this huge amount of praise saying, God, thank you for allowing this to take place. And I know you guys are excited. Every time I'm here, Terry's showing me new updates, and it's awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. That place is amazing. I'm switching churches once you get over there. Okay, I'll be here. I'll just be sitting up front. This is the best I've ever seen in my life. But I promise you that's not it. That's not it. It's awesome, and it's a great way for God to bless you, but that's not it. That's not the main thing. The main thing is you guys being that group that says, we're going to be a church in this community that brings light to a dark place. I mean, drive down this road 2 miles, 30 feet. I promise you can find so many people without hope who are hurting, who need Christ. They need hope for their life, and God's called you guys to help bring that light. I'm also honored to be here because I love when churches come together. You know, the backpack giveaway maybe isn't the greatest outreach in the world, but it's one of my favorites. Just because I think it's so awesome to see a group of churches together to tell the community, hey, we are not enemies. We are not in competition with each other. We're not. Like when you guys win, guess what? We win. That's the beauty of it. That's what's so amazing for us, but we compare. And I got to be honest with you guys, and maybe it's because I'm competitive, but I compare a lot. I do. I really do. Sometimes I don't even see the great thing God's doing because I'm too much focused on what's happening around me and what other people have. It works that way. Comparison kills contentment. It does. If you don't want to be content in life, let me give you some bad advice real quick. Compare everything you have to everybody else, and you'll never be content with what you have. 2 problems with comparison. Number 1, real quick, if you want to write this down, you can. Comparison comes from pride. Get that? Of all the things that God hates, a proud look, pride, number 1. Right? When we see that the enemy, when Satan fell, what was it? It was because of pride. Satan was saying, I will, but I, me, I. And God said, no. Not in His economy. Pride is a horrible thing. I mean, we love to talk about drugs or, all these kind of the big sins or, all this. And I get that. And they're wrong. And I'm okay with that. But I always think, what if we focus on some of the things Jesus talked about? Right? I mean, you think He put a whole new playing field with everything He's talking about. It's like, well, you shouldn't murder. We've never killed anyone. Jesus, we're pretty good, right? It's like, or hate your brother. That's kind of the same. In your heart, what? So when I'm mad at you, some of you maybe can even walk into the same building and not forgive each other. And Christ is saying, hey, just the same, right? Those of you who've committed adultery, I've never cheated because I'm holy. I'm pretty holy, right? And then it's like, but if you've even lusted after a woman, if you've even looked at a woman with oh, man, Jesus, that's like you're making it real, right? It's pride. I wonder if those types of sins, when Jesus say, how about the pride in your life? Where your life is all about you and nobody else. In 1 Samuel 18, that's where we're going to be today. I want to give you the first king, basically Israel ever had. God called him. His name was Saul. He was really tall. And with Saul, we'll find that he started out in a lot of ways kind of well. And he was kind of like, even though he was a big guy and people kind of looked towards him, he had some good moments. But we're going to find he starts to transition and he really goes downhill and ends up ending his life in a horrible way. And I think it all starts kind of in this moment right here. 1 Samuel 18, verse 6 says this. David had just killed the giant, and this is where we're at. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with tambourines and lutes. And as they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands. See, Saul was the man, but he'd already heard some rumors maybe that there might be a new king in town. Maybe he's starting to hear, hey, there's this other guy, and maybe the fear of what's going on. But it was the pride of Saul that changed everything. It was the pride. Pride ruined him. But that's what comparison does. Listen to me. If you are constantly comparing you as a mom to somebody else, there's only two things that can happen, and both of them are bad. Do you know that? If you compare yourself with anyone else, only one of two things happen, and both are not good for you. The first one is you have pride. Say you are better. She's a horrible mom. I may not be a good mom, but I'm better than her. Right? What are you doing? You're having pride. You're comparing yourself to something God never wanted you to compare with. C.S. Lewis had this quote, and I love it. We say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good looking, but they're not. They're proud of being richer or clever or better looking than others. If everyone else became equally rich or clever or good looking, there would be nothing to be proud about. We do that though. And let me warn you, as followers of Jesus, we sometimes can have I'm glad I don't do that. Did you know they smoke? Worst ever, right? I mean, I literally knew a pastor, and God bless him. He was very influential to me. He was a great man. I remember he was always harping on, don't smoke, drink, chew, run with girls who do. He's kind of that mentality. And I remember even in that once, drive-through, ready? It's like, it's going on and on about this sin, a little smoking. Yeah, I'd like 4 Big Macs, 4 gallons of Coke, 8 fries. Trent, you want anything? No, you're good, right? But we do that. It's like the stuff we do is never as bad as anyone else. That's pride, and it's dangerous. Instead of us all realizing at the foot of the cross, we're all jacked up. We're all messed up, and we all need help. Amen. Second thing, though, so I compare, and I'm better than you, or I think I am, so I feel good, and that's pride. That's not good. But then the second thing is, what if I'm not? What if you're better than me? Then the second point, if you want to take notes, comparison makes us resentful. Notice what happens in verse 7. As they danced, they sang, Saul had slain his thousands. He's like, yeah, I have. You're right. And David his tens of thousands. Whoa, time out. What? Saul was very angry. This refrain galled him. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And get this. And from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. You know the problem with comparison? Here's what happens. We resent God's goodness in others' lives and ignore God's blessing in our own. That's so dangerous. You see, what happens when I start comparing is I start actually overlooking or forgetting about all the ways that God has blessed me. I don't know if Terry's ever done this for you guys, but as a pastor or as someone here up front talking to you guys, I'm going to give you some bad advice real quick, okay? If you want to be miserable and ruin most of your life, I'm going to give you 4 easy steps to do it, okay? So here it is. You might want to take notes. Some of you don't need to take notes. You do it every day, okay? So here you go. Here's your whole thing. Number 1, resent your stuff. Resent everything materially that God's blessed you with. Don't be thankful that you have a house and somewhere to live and you have, heat and air and food. Don't you dare. Instead, compare. Yeah, but I only have a 2-bedroom home. My neighbor has a 4-bedroom home. I don't have a boat. They got a new boat. Always resent your stuff because you compare it to all the stuff you don't have. God, I just want a jet ski. Is that too much to ask? Neighbor gets one. I don't. Here's another one. This is so important. If you want to ruin your marriage, okay, resent it. Compare your spouse all the time. Well, do you know what? You know what he does? I was talking to Susie today. Guess what he does? Right? Do that. Oh, don't you dare for 1 second, listen to me. Don't you ever maybe stop and think about, man, he's been a good husband. He's been faithful to me. He's provided for our family. He's loved our children. Don't you dare look at your wife and think, man, she has been a great mom. No one looks out for this family like she does. Don't you dare do that. No, compare. Well, she doesn't look like she does. Yeah, she's had 14 kids. She's 17. It's not, you can't do it. It doesn't work that way. But we do that. I got one for you guys. Resent your job. Do you know if you're a follower of Jesus, one of the greatest things you can do is be a great employee? Some of you right now, you're like, I am. No, sending 800 forwards of cats and angels and prayer chains is not being a good employee, okay? It's not. Being a good employee is saying, you know what? I realize I'm not working for you. Do you know that? You don't work for a school if you're a teacher here. You don't work for a company. You work for Christ every day. That's the beauty of we can have any job. You can literally be someone who just shovels every day. You're not just shoveling. You're working for Christ. That's the example. People around us should be like, I don't even know if I believe what that cat believes, but you got to admit, they do things right. They do. They set an example. They have character. When we're all sitting around the water cooler just bashing someone else who's not there, they don't partake in that. They're an example. That's how it works. But don't do that. Hate your job. Don't you dare think about the people who've lost their job over the last few months, people who are worried about how they're going to pay their bills. Don't worry about them. Think about the other jobs that make more than you. And then finally, my kids are here. If I want my kids to hate me, the greatest thing I can do is compare them every day. Tegan, if you could just be like your brother Taden, if you could just, just do that. And I said this earlier, my kids will tell you this. They are so opposite in so many ways. My son loves sports. Like, we will sit and watch badminton together for 6 hours, and he's in. He's like, Dad, this is the most awesome thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, we will watch sports all day. He loves sports. I love sports. My daughter, though, she should have been transplanted in the 60s as like a flower child of Woodstock, okay? She's like, just wants to paint. I'll come in and like she's always making something. She's always inventing something. Like, oh, that's a pizza warmer I made with aluminum foil and duct tape and, cat hair from the neighbor. It's like just the weirdest. She's always doing something like that. But you know what I could do? If I want to be a really bad parent, and some of you would do that, then I'm going to compare. Why don't you have straight A's like your sister does? Why don't you do better in math like he does? Instead of finding the unique calling God has given them. But if you want to ruin it, don't you dare be thankful for God's goodness in your life. Compare all the things you don't have. Which brings me to the final thing I want to say. How do you kill the comparisons in your life? Well, here's what you do. You kill those comparisons by growing your gratitude. You see, I can't be complaining about my situation when I'm grateful for my situation. I have to pick one of the two. They don't coexist. I cannot be grateful for my marriage and complain about my marriage at the same time. I got to choose. And I would argue with you guys, I don't care how bad the situation is. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Because it's what we focus on is what changes everything. Ecclesiastes 6:9 says, enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't. Is that not America, though? All we do is desire what we don't have as opposed to enjoying what we do. So how do we do this? I think Paul gives us a great example in Philippians 4:12 and 13. Paul says this. He says, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. You guys ready? That's pretty bold. He said, I don't care. I've been in prison. I've had everything I could want. I've also been sitting in a cell wondering if they're going to cut off my head the next day. I've been in it all. I've seen the best and the worst. And in all those, I've learned one thing. Here's the secret of being content. I can do all things. I can do all this through Christ who gives me strength. I want you to think about this for a second. If you've been ignoring me or you fell asleep, that's fine. Let me give you a phrase, though, to take home. Okay? This is important. This will give some of you great freedom. Great freedom. I don't have to prove anything because Christ already approves of me. Do you know that? I don't have to. I've lived my whole life. I grew up with all brothers, ultra competitive. I mean, everything we do. To this day, we'll be sitting at like the dinner table. I'm not making this up. And it'd be like as soon as the food comes out, we're all racing to see who can eat the most, who can eat the fastest. One's 40, I'm 37, my other brother's 30. Like, we're ridiculous. Our kids are like, why are you guys so weird, right? I mean, we do that. We were sitting at my parents' house just a while back. And my older brother, like my son walked by and he said, hey, you know I can still whip your dad, right? I whipped him every day growing up, right? I'm like, dude, what's up? I can take you right now. So then we're about to fight in the living room, right? Because we're competitive. But as I think about that, I've let that carry over in so many parts of my life, and it's dangerous. Not only am I comparing, I'm always trying to prove myself by comparing myself to, well, how am I doing as a pastor? Well, this pastor's really good at that. And I'll say this, you guys, I struggle with so much of that. I'm not a smart guy. Jenny, I am not a smart man, okay? I'm not. And I've always kind of wondered that, like, I wish I could get up here and use big words and impress people. At my church all the time, I'm just like, man, I wish I could just walk up there and I can't. I tell stories, and I'm not very smart. But here's what I've learned. It's not my job to be anybody but who I am and do the things God's called me to do. So here's what happened in our life. And just so you kind of know, from my wife and I, she's been reading through the book of Acts and been like telling me updates about it and like loves the book. She treated it like she didn't even know it was in the Bible or something. I don't know. She grew up in church her whole life. Which is whatever. But so she came to me and she's like talking about different things. It's cool. But she came up to me, and we get caught up too many times with our kids in sports and just kind of the race that we're in with other people and find ourselves chasing things we shouldn't be chasing. But it was just a few weeks ago, she said, I want to give you this verse. She was like, I'm telling you, I read it and read it. This has to be our family verse. Print it out, put it on the fridge. This is the Carpenter's family verse, and I want to share that with you today. This is what Paul says in Acts 20:24. He says, however, I consider my life worth nothing to me. Think about that for a second. We're comparing, we're trying to be better, we're trying to see how do we match up. I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus had given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace. Would you think about that for a second? What if Tri-State Worship Center was a church of people who said, all collectively, we are going to look to Jesus Christ and say, we consider our lives worth nothing. All we care about, at the end of the day, our sole purpose is you and your gospel, is making disciples, is loving people the way that you love them, is caring for people, is having compassion. What if we all, as a church, not just you guys, what if in South Point the churches came together and said, you know what, at the end of the day, yeah, we're a little bit different. There's nothing wrong with being different. I'm glad the body of Christ is different. You know that? I'm sitting here watching you guys worship. You're different than us. You are. You're way better than us. Like, really, you are. Your worship's way better. But I'll say this, even with that, as I was watching, I thought, you know, I'm glad it's different. I'm glad my kids are different. I don't want them to be the same. It's not fun, right? But just because you're different doesn't mean you can't be united. And we can be united because we all fly under the same banner, and that is that Jesus Christ not only died, but he came back to life, overcoming death, sin, the grave, hell, all those reasons we have victory in Christ. And we need to be united with that. But what if today we walked out of these doors and we all said this phrase, however, I consider my life worth nothing to me. Nothing. I'm not important here. I'm not. I told my wife this morning as I was walking in, just being real honest with you guys, I said, I don't want to say anything to impress these people. Let me let you in on a preacher's secret, okay? People won't tell you this, but it's true. When you go like guest speak somewhere, you can put together your all-star message of the universe. Like, you know what stories over the last 5 years made people cry and laugh. So you can be like, you literally walk in like a rock star. And the reason you do that is because you want to walk out and be like, yeah, I'm better than your guy, right? Like Terry spoke at our church a few times. And although I said this, I want him to do a good job, but I don't want him to do a great job, right? I mean, I don't. I'm kind of like up there. There's a few times he was saying stuff. I was like, oh, that's great, you know? I mean, like people are walking up afterwards like, so Terry, when's your church start again? Right? I'm like, dude, I'm standing right beside you. It's just like, it's horrible, right? But you start doing, but in all honesty, and I don't remember what I was saying, so we'll just move on from that. But what if but that's what you can do. And I told my wife this morning, I really did. I said, I don't want to walk into this place. I don't want to be at your church today. I don't want to try to be, this or that. I don't. I want to encourage you guys. I do. I want you guys to be reminded of how much God has blessed this place. I want you guys to be thankful for the leadership and the volunteers and the amazing people you have here. And at the end of the day, I want to remind you that if we can come together and say, my life is worth nothing in comparison to the gospel, I'm going to live for the gospel and for Jesus Christ, and that's all that matters. If we do those things, I'm telling you guys, the Tri-State South Point will never be the same. Amen. And we can make an eternal difference. So I shared a different story that I closed with last time. I'm going to switch it up, though, just because at our church, like we speak multiple times, I always try to like look back at the sound people who have to watch it multiple times. I mean, they're miserable. So I always try to throw like a switcheroo in there somehow. So like, hey, you didn't say that the first time. So this is just for the guy in the back, since none of you have heard. This is for Terry and him. But we have a neighbor of ours who actually has had a lot of he's just a little guy. I think he's in maybe 7th grade now. Had all kinds of heart problems, had a bunch of issues even when he was born. And I was thinking about even us in comparison. And it was kind of neat to me because they actually had a Make-A-Wish Foundation came in. And they literally walked in. I mean, we don't know how long this kid has. We see him all the time. When we drive by, we play with him. Kids like him real well. He's a wild man. But anyways, they came in, and his mom said, okay, like they literally make a wish. I think it's make a wish, whatever you want. So she looked at her son, and she said, what would you like? And he said, I'd like a big stop sign, a hard hat, and maybe one of the Ironton City workers who work like utilities to come see me. And she said, you're not dreaming big enough. So she's trying to plan, how about Hawaii, Disney World, Rome? Like she's going there. And he was like, no, that's what I want. But she was telling us this, and I love this phrase. She said, he looked at her and said, what else could I want? And I got to thinking about that, and even for us. As I look at my life, and this won't make sense to you guys because you don't know me that well, but I'm kind of ashamed before God too many times because I'm comparing what's going on in my church, and I wish this was better, or I'm comparing in my life, or my job, or my money, or whatever. And I'm just looking at how someone else is doing it, how many people are getting saved, all the things. I'm just being honest. It's not right, it's not healthy, it's wrong, but I do it. And when I really stop and think about it, I have to be a lot more like him and say, what else could I want? I mean, God, you've given me a faithful wife of 15 years who does more behind the scenes, and Terry can testify to this, I'm sure with his wife Vicky too, who does more than anyone knows. In our church, people walk up and they'll introduce themselves to my wife and be like, hi, I'm Tina. Who are you? Jonda. Oh, okay. Have you been here long? And she's like, well, I'm kind of the pastor's wife, whatever. Like literally has done so much. When we first started, we met in the Country Hearth Hotel, 5-star hotel, right down here. You guys know it? I remember we had a little kids room we could use, and it was awesome. But once a month, there's like an AA meeting or state highway patrol, some meeting there. Anyways, we had to meet in a hotel room. And I'll never forget walking up to my wife. It was like week 4, and I was like, "Look, we don't have the big room now. You're going to have to use a hotel room." And she's looking at me like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't know. Make it fun. Like pretend like you're on Noah's Ark on the bed or something." But we literally had to walk people in and were like, "Yeah, your kids' room's in this hotel room. Just a dirty old hotel room." God bless. It was like, but you know what? For a full year when we started our church, she wasn't in one service. She was helping the kids. We didn't have any volunteers. And I'll never forget, we would get in our car every single Sunday, and she'd look at me. How did it go? Anyone get saved? Anything happen? She was so amped. What else could I ask for? I have 2 healthy kids who literally are so much fun. I've got a great church. I'm friends with so many great pastors. So I'll challenge you as we close today to ask this question. What else could I ask for, God? Because at the end of the day, above all that, some of you are like, my life's way more crummier than that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, here's what I can say. I have a Savior who died for me, who paid the ultimate price even though I didn't deserve it, so I could have life with Him. What else could I ask for? What else could you ask for? Let's pray together. If you would, just join me. If you would, just close your eyes for just a second. Jesus, I thank you so much for this church. I pray that I can at least be somewhat of a blessing to them today. I'm truly so thankful for the impact they have in this community. Thankful for the love that they've shown, for stepping out, for literally being a trailblazer in the tri-state, and just for the amazing things you've done for them. And God, I also celebrate the amazing things you're going to continue to do. I pray for Terry, for this church's leadership, for all the key volunteers, just for every member, every person here, that God, you would continue to bless what they do, and that they would be reminded at the end of the day, it's not about any of us here. It's about you and your glory. God, I pray that you would set this area on fire through the local church coming together, saying, my life is worth nothing in comparison to the gospel. So we continue to pray, God, I pray for someone here who maybe has never taken that step of faith. Maybe a lot of things that we're saying is weird to them, but right now, right where they're at, God, they're going to look to you and say, you know what, I've never asked you to be my Savior. They've never taken that step to cross over from death to life, and right where they're at for the first time, this is going to be their moment of salvation. Today is the day of salvation. And as we continue in prayer without anybody looking around, if you for the first time in your life feel like maybe God's convicting your heart, you've never asked Jesus Christ to save you and forgive you. You've never said, Jesus, I know I've sinned. I know I've messed up, but today I'm asking you to forgive me of my sin. If you're ready to take that step through faith today, without anybody looking around, I want you to do something really bold if you would. Right where you're at. No one looking around. If you would, I'd just like you just to raise your hand. You don't have to look up at me. Just say, Trent, I've never asked Jesus to save me. I've never done that. That's you? Awesome. Thank you for your hand. Now I'm going to challenge you to do something today. I'm going to challenge you by faith today, if you would, make today the day of salvation. If you could raise your hand there, I'm going to challenge you to come forward. We'll have people here at the altar. I'll pray with you, but someone can explain to you what it means to put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If that's you, I'm going to ask you with boldness just to step up and come forward right now. Today is your day. Your time is now. Step forward. And today, put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If that's you, come. Come. As we continue in prayer, I'm just going to ask some of you here who would say, like me, so many times in my life, would say, Jesus, I am so caught up in chasing so many things that don't matter. I'm comparing so many things that at the end of the day mean nothing. God, let me be about you and your kingdom. Let me be about the gospel. Let me be able to say that my life is worth nothing in light of your gospel. If that's some of you like me who've too many times we get caught up in too many things that don't matter, just like to lift your hand today and say, Trent, pray for me. Pray for me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys for your hands. God, I do pray. I pray for those with their hands up, and I also invite them now as we pray, God, if they'd like to come forward, maybe come to your altar just to pray, just to seek you, just to ask you to give us our heart's desire, like you, to say our life is worth nothing in comparison to your gospel. Let us live that out every day. If you want to come, please come. And Jesus, as we close in prayer today, I again thank you for this church, what they mean to me, what they mean to this community, and I pray you continue to keep your hand on them, but God, let them never forget everything they have, everything they'll continue to have is from you and you only. We ask this in your name, and amen. Thanks for having me.
Come on, stand and sing that. As I lift my hands toward heaven, let your fire fall down on me. Rekindle the flame within me, Lord, once again. All I wanna do is come on, tell him. All I want to do is worship you. All I want to do is lay here right at your feet. As I lift my hands toward heaven, let your fire fall down on me. Rekindle the flame within me, Lord, once again. What a mighty God we serve, amen? Thank you. It was as good the second time as it was the first. And I was a little concerned about the first one. I love Trent. I love his family. I love his church. It's just awesome to have a friend like that. I appreciate him coming and sharing. And if you'll come back tonight, you're going to see, and I honestly did not talk to him about what he was going to share, because I'd have told him to talk about raising money, but he didn't ask. So you're going to see how my message tonight is going to dovetail with what he said this morning. I'm telling you, the Lord knew what he was doing when he sent Trent down this way. So I appreciate you coming. Maybe it won't be so long before you'll come back again. Jake's going to come and give us some announcements. When she's done, we'll be dismissed. Thank you for being here. God bless you. I'll see you this evening.
Don't forget evening church tonight at 6. Tomorrow evening at 6:30 is the men's meeting. All guys are invited. Tuesday is Narcotics Anonymous at 7 p.m. Wednesday are midweek services at 7. Thursday is the women's Bible study at 6. Saturday, wings here at the church at 1. Also, the Shoebox Ministry is collecting a few things you may have around your house. Old CDs, old DVDs, marbles, and plastic lids off your bottle tops. So bring those into Vicki or Debbie Mays. See you tonight.